Right, okay, so what I'm going to attempt to do in p5js is to store some data. I don't know what that data is going to be, but it's going to be in some sort of array structure. This is my first attempt at doing something. It's going to have some numbers. And what I'll do is I'll use colors to represent these numbers or something like that. Just to keep it simple. 70 and 80. And if I can get this to work, I'll see if I can make it work with like a 2D array or a 2D list. So I want to put on screen, so like some boxes. I might actually stitch them together so they're next to each other as well. So they actually look like the array I've drawn. So that's what I'm going to attempt to do. And I'm going to do that in P5, if I can find the right window. Right, the structure. Yeah, hang on a minute. That's all right. Right, am I going again? Yeah, I think I'm going again. Right, okay, so the basic structure of these P5 programs, from what I've seen of it, is you have the setup routines is it happens once right at the start. And then magically, in the background, that we have got no control over, this draw function, whatever's in there, is run, and the default for this would appear to be 60 frames a second. So 60 times a second, it will run the draw routine. You can mess with that by using, I think it is the frame rate, is it? That one. Yeah, so if I was to put frame rate 30, then that will run the draw function 30 times a second. I don't know what numbers work with that, but for what I'm doing, it doesn't really matter anyway. So the first thing I'm going to do is I need to store this list of numbers. So I have got no idea. I cannot remember off the top of my head how you do that in JavaScript, even though I've done it a million times. So I'm going to do a search, JavaScript array. Go to some documentation. Hopefully I get a little bit of code that shows me how to do it. So we got create an array. Can we add things to an array? Add an item to array. Oh, push and pop. Yeah, it uses this weird notation of push and pop. I think I remember that from. Right, so I can make an array with some values in it, or I can make an empty array and then put values in it. And we seem to use this let notation to like create a variable. I think JavaScript's quite slack. If you don't put it, it does it anyway. But we're gonna create that first. So I'm gonna, and in fact I can't remember it because it's just gonna out of my head. I'm just gonna copy and paste that so I've got an example for myself. So I'm just gonna do that at the top. Anything at the top is gonna be global. I don't actually want that, so I'm just gonna comment it out and I'm gonna leave it there. So I've got a reference. That should have a semicolon after it, probably. Right, so I don't know what this data that I was going to represent means, so I'm just going to call it stuff. And this is truly what I do when I'm working out new stuff. I don't care about things. So I'm going to say stuff equals, and I'm going to create an empty array. Okay, so in my setup code, then what I'm going to do is that stuff.push. And I'm going to push my values. So so I'm just going to half and half that so I can see what I'm doing. So I had on here, zoom it back. It doesn't really matter what the numbers are, but I've written them down, so I'm going to do it. 5. Right, so I'm going to copy paste that. So 7, 200, 150, 70, 80. So just make sure I change the numbers. The important thing is I've got different values so that I can check whether this is working properly when I'm doing it. And 80. Right, so the really important thing for me is that you don't do too much before you run something, because you want to know whether it's working. Right, that hasn't crashed, so that's a good thing. So in the draw routine, what I want to do before I try and visualize it, I want to make sure I can access and display the contents of this. So I'm just going to do a little test. I'm going to say, in fact, I don't know how to print in P5. So let's go back to, how do we do drawing? So if I look on the library, the reference, sorry, not the library. I meant reference library in my head. So print, I think you can print to the console or something. Print method. What is this? So print right to the console area. Right, okay, so I'm just check that I'm doing something right. So I just put print. All right, let's try that. So print, and what I want to print is stuff, and I'm going to print um, the first element number, which should be number 7. Now you can see the console windows at the bottom. So can I move that up? Yeah, that's better. Right, so I'll just rejig that. Right, so I'm going to run that again, and hopefully I get 7 printed out. Don't know. Aha. Now, can you see? He says coughing. He's continually doing it because of the constantly drawing, running the draw routine. Okay, so I'm going to stop that because obviously that's junk. Right, so instead of outputting it to the console, and the console's actually good for debugging output, which is there, so it doesn't interfere with what you're doing on the canvas. But obviously I don't want that. I'd rather be able to draw on the screen. I don't know how you do that, so let's find out how we do that. I'm just gonna go back. So if I draw, so I'm gonna put text. I've done it. Ah, this is what I want. So luckily they're giving it a sensible name. I'm not gonna do that where it all goes jazzy. I just want to display some junk on screen. Right, so we got this one. You can set a size using text size. I think the way that P5 works is you've got all these drawing context, and you set something and it stays. And then, but you can save a context by saying push and pop, and I think I read that somewhere. So I'm going to look down to the description because I can see the examples look simple, but I want to know what all these numbers are. And they've done things in different colors, so I don't know how they've done that. Oh, that might be that fill thing. So let's just have a look. So they give you a list of parameters. One thing that you'll find strange compared to C# is you don't, there's no real parameter checking in JavaScript. So you have to be explicit with everything you do. So if you give it 15 parameters and it only expected 3, it won't moan at you. But you won't know there's anything wrong either. So you've got to be careful with this. Right, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try just using that first one. I think that's X and Y coordinates. So, and I can test that anyway when I start messing. So instead of saying print stuff, I'm going to say, I've forgotten what it's called again. Text. All right, so I'm going to say text, and I'm going to do stuff 1, and I'm going to display it at 2020. And I'm probably going to display another one, and then that'll tell me something about these coordinates. So I'm going to change that one to 40, and I'm going to display the next one. So this should be 200, the second one. Right, so I'm going to run that. Right, 7 and 200. Now, the key thing here is that is not just displayed and stopping. It's constantly redrawing that. So this background thing is constantly redrawing it. All right. If I wanted to move that down the screen, what I could do is create another variable, and I'll set it at 20. And then in the draw function, I could do this. I could say ypos plus equals 1 to make it move down. So every time we draw, it's going to drop down. So if I run that sketch, oh, it didn't do anything because I actually didn't use ypos. Oh dear, my programming history is littered with this. Right, so I've now just added that, so it's modifying that value. Oh, oh God, don't do F5 because I'm in the browser, aren't I? Got to be careful that refreshes the browser. And there you go. That's how I've moved it down the screen. Okay, it goes off the screen. So because I'm a nerd, I'm going to make it bounce instead. So, because I am. So I'm going to say if ypos is greater than, I don't know how big I've made the screen. What did I set the canvas to? 400. So if I say if it's bigger than 400, I want it to go the other way. But at the minute, I'm always adding 1. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say dy equals 1. And I'm going to change that 1 to dy. So I'm just saying, right, okay, then if ypos is greater than 400, then I'm going to set dy equal to -1. So let's run that, see what it does. And it's all about doing this, doing a little bit, running it, doing a little bit, running it. So that should go off the screen, and then it should come back on the screen. And then it'll go off the top, because I'm not doing anything for the top end. So what I can do is, if it goes off the top of the screen, I want it to go back to plus dy equals 1 again. But there is a cleverer way of doing this. So I can say, if it's gone off the bottom, or, and that's or in JavaScript, uses the same as C# and C++, or ypos is less than 0, then what I can do, instead of saying make it -1 or +1, I can say whatever you are, multiply it by -1. So if it was a 1 and I multiply it by -1, it becomes 1. If it was -1 and I multiply it by -1, it becomes 1. So, oh, no, I did F5 again. Probably one of the good reasons for using VS Code. Because the F5 will actually run it. So that should now bounce. So I've at least I've built an array and I'm accessing it, but it's a bit junk. I don't want numbers on the screen. That was just me just getting my way around it. So let's get rid of all the text stuff. Now, what you find pretty quickly is that you're making code that does something else. So really, what I should do is have another function. So I'm going to have function text test. I'm going to call that. And I'm going to put, I don't know why everyone uses that as, putting the brace like that, but I'm going to do it because that's what p5's using. But I'm going to move all this code into, in fact, I'll take that comment as well, all that code into that function. I want to try and keep all this tidy. Okay, they're associated with that, so I'm going to just put them above that function as well. If I want to run that code, I run the function. So just make sure that, oh, I've done it again. Memory like a sieve. Right, so that's all still working. So if I want to get rid of that, I can just comment that line out. All right, so I've not lost any of my code. It's sat away in a function. Right, now I want to try and print all of them out. So I want to display all. So I'm going to make a function, display all. Doesn't exist yet, so I'm just going to create that. So function, display all. And this is the thing that's going to iterate across the... oh, I've done what I said I wasn't going to do. It's going to iterate across the thing. I'm recording, Dave. Sorry, man. So I want to start at index 0 and run through. So I can do a for loop. Now, nicely, JavaScript for loops are the same as all the C for loops. So hopefully I can do this. For in I don't think I have to put in. I think I can put let I equal. I don't know. I'm guessing this. Let I, and that's less than. And then we want the length of the array. But you know what? I have got no idea how that works. So I wonder if there was an example on this array thing I was looking at. Length. No, let me do a search. Length of array in JavaScript. Now there it is. Oh, it's dot length. It's a property of it. Right, so if I want to do this, what was my thing called? Stuff dot length. And then I plus plus. Now I'm going to put it in braces. Oh, let me stick to the JavaScript way. The reason people do that, put the brace up on the previous lines, because it saves one line of code. But I don't actually like it but I'll stick to it for this. Right, so I'm going to use this text code. So I'm going to say text stuff I, and then I want to display it. So I'm going to do it at 20, and then I want to say what my starting position is, but then I want each one to be a little bit further down. So I'm going to use the value of I, and everything starting at 0 is a really beautiful thing. It makes solutions to lots of things simple. So this first time I do this calculation, I is going to be 0, so it is just going to be at 20. The next time around, I is going to be 1, so it's going to be 20 plus 20. Then it'll be 40 plus 20. So it really helps me. So hopefully, when I run this, it's going to display every element of that array, if I've done it right. Oh, there it is. It's worked. Right, so I've got something that iterates over my array. What I want to do is I want to draw some boxes or something. All right, so I have no idea how to draw a box. And I'm going to draw these boxes horizontal as well. So instead of going down, I'll do it horizontal. So I'm going to create another function to do this. I'm going to say function visual array. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a parameter. So I'm going to give it I don't know how you do parameters. I think I just put I think I just put a name in, I think. It's the problem of working in too many languages. I just never remember it. So I could look at W3 schools. They're usually quite good for nice examples, but I'm going to go to the horse's mouth. Oh, I just put a letter. I don't have to do anything else. Right, so I'm just going to say, I'm going to call it list. I'm going to call it list. So I'm going to try and make this more generic. So I'm going to do a for loop. So I'm not going to copy and paste because that's like a hide into nothing. So you will make loads of mistakes that you can't spot if you do that sort of stuff. So I'm going to do I is less than list dot length I plus plus. Okay, right. So I want to do a rectangle. So first off, before I try and do anything clever, let's see if I can draw a rectangle. I can't remember what that's called. So I'm going to again search the reference and just look for, oops, can't spell. That doesn't help. Oh, there's nothing called rectangle. There's anything called rect. Aha. Right, rect. Draw a rectangle at 30, 20. Right, so it's a standard rectangle. Top left-hand corner, width and height. Okay, so go back to my editor. So I'm just going to test that. So rectangle. So I'm going to go 20, 20, and I'm going to make it 30 by 30. So let's run that and see what that does. Right, that's fine. So that's using the default settings. I don't care about how I set the line or the color yet. I'm not bothered about that. I'll look the color up when I want to display the number. Right, okay, so that works. So I've got my head around that. So again, I'm just going to comment that out. So what I want to do first off is I want to just generate rectangles. I'm not bothered about the contents of the array, but I just want them all next to each other. So a little bit like my text code, where I had like a start position and then the height, and I kept adjusting the height by using I. I'm going to do that for adjusting the horizontal position. So I'm going to just draw. So I'm going to say rect. Now, so the start position is going to be 20, but I want to space these out. If I'm going to make them 30 wide and I want them all touching, then I need to space out by 30. So I'm going to say I times 30. So the first one's going to be at 20. I will be 0, so that's going to be 0. The next one's going to be I is 1, so that's going to be 20 plus 30. Next one's going to be 2, so it's going to be 20 plus 60. So hopefully that's going to work. The height, I want to be that. And then the width and height of each rectangle is going to be 30. Right, so I need to run this visual array, otherwise it's not going to do anything. So visual array. Another reason for using VS Code is that the IntelliSense picks that up and it would type that for me. The list I want to do is stuff. Right, so let's see what that does. Oh, nearly did F5 again then. Hooray! Got success. Right. What I might do is try and display the numbers in the boxes. All right. So I'm trying to just keep doing things. I'm going to, because we're drawing, the last thing we draw is going to be on top. I think that's how it works. You can probably mess about with that and change draw order and things, but I'm going to draw my text afterwards. So I've got my little bit of code for that. So I've got text. So it's going to be list I, and then I want to say what position. So I've got to think now. So it isn't going to start at 20. It needs to be the center of that square. So that square is 30 wide. Now, you can probably change the text alignment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say 20 plus I times 30 and just see what happens when I do this first. And then I don't want it to be at height 20. I'm going to try, I don't know, height 30. It might look not work. I don't know. So I'm going to push it along in the same way that I've pushed the rectangles along and just run it and see what it does. Right, so that's stuffed up in the top left-hand corner. So I can make some adjustments here. So I'm going to make the Y position starting at 30. I still want to space it every 30 because the squares are 30. So let's just see what that looks like. One change at a time. Yeah, that looks a bit better, but the 200's too far over now. So maybe let's try 25. Like I say, ideally, we could calculate the center of the square, and if we change the text alignment, and we'll look at that in a sec, see how you do that. Set the text alignment, and then it'll center the number. So we can look at that in a sec. I need to drop it down a bit, so maybe 30, 35, maybe. Try that. Oh, press F5. At least it says, do you want to cancel? Oh, I'm gonna, yeah, oh, that's good enough for that. Right, so I've got that in there. Let's have a look at text alignment. I don't know how you do that, but, oh, text align. How's that work? Oh, text align center. So the position we give it with the center. So that's perfect. So that's what I'm going to use. In fact, I'm going to copy and paste that because I'll forget it. Case sensitive JavaScript. So that center thing is a constant value. So before I do this drawing, and I might change the alignment in other places, I'm just going to set that here. I'm going to say, right, okay, for when I do this, set the alignment to center. Now, the center of these squares is going to be 15 plus whatever. So I need to, that probably means that the center would be 25, 35. So I'm going to try that. That looks centered. So it was a good guess first time. Okay. But it is about playing about. Right. So the next thing I'm going to try and do is represent the color. So I need to know how you change the color of a rectangle. So let's go back to that rect one because that might have had some examples of the color. Or it might have told us about the colour. I don't think it changed the colour that way. So I don't know how to change the colour. So I'm gonna colour p5 colour mode colour. There's something called colour. What does colour do? That's showing me some stuff. But let me look at the description. Creates colours for storing values. It will be interpreted as grayscale. Right. Oh, you see, you can do alpha. So I think we have to say, oh, fill. It's fill that you've got to use by the looks of it. So let's just search for fill. Right, so that actually does look that. So sets the color used to fill shapes. So you can put RGB values directly in. So, right, okay. So before we draw each rectangle, we're going to change the fill. So we're going to say fill, and I'm actually going to use the number in the list. And I'm gonna do it in green. So I'll fix this in a sec. So I'm going to use that. So no blue, and I want no red. I think the nice thing is you can do transparency and things like that. So you can do all sorts of weird effects. Right, so I'm saying no red. Use the green number from the array. So that's going to be a little bit, they're going to be dark, very dark green. That's going to be quite bright. That's going to be middling-ish. The maximum value will be 255 because it's RGB. And there you go. Nice little bit of visualization. What's interesting there is now I can't see the text because I think Phil probably sets the text color as well. So I probably need, I don't know what color is going to show up well on that. I'm going to try white. So if I'm guessing this is what's happened. So I'm going to say 255, 255, 255. That's white, full red, full green, full blue. That was a good guess. So I think this is one of the weird things with this is that if you change the color, that's the new pen color. A bit like turtle in Python. That was the same, wasn't it? Oh, can you? Oh, you're gonna have to put one, and it assumes you want to do it in all three. And that's quite handy. So if I did, yeah, because we're doing white, so it's a grayscale, isn't it? It did say that, didn't it? Yeah. So actually, that saves. If you were worried about your bandwidth for your code, that's why you would do things like that. It's why they built that. It sounds daft, but if you're setting that fill lots of times, in fact, if you're setting that fill lots of times, you should stick it in a variable. But there you go. Right. So I'll try that. It was a good. Yeah. So that does work. So that's handy. So I have to reset the fill all the time. Um, right. Okay. So what I'm now going to try and do is I'm now going to try and do a 2D array. I'm assuming, I'm going to guess, but if I do a 2D array, I think you probably do it like that. Maybe. I don't know. It might be this to do a 2D array. So you do bracket, 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 bracket. But I'm just going to check that out. He's got an error there, so he's not happy. So 2D array in Java. Oh, I hate it when it does that. 2D array JavaScript. How to create a 2D array in JavaScript. It might actually be an array of an array. Oh, you can do it like that. Oh, that wasn't. So 2D arrays are a bit more of a mouthful. So you create an array and you create an array inside of it. So it's an array of an array. So I'm going to make a separate one to stuff. So I'm going to say let more stuff. Oh no, I'm going to call it X stuff. X stuff equal that. I don't want to mess up the one that I've got working because I want to use it as an example to look back at. Right, okay, so if I wow, I don't know, that doesn't help me. Remember that was only the first thing oh, no, actually, hang on. No, that was just new array. That's they didn't get ticked though, did it? No one liked that one. Let's have a look at this one. You will need to look at multiple things for doing this. Now, that's the easy way of doing it when you declare it. But if you want to dynamically create it, that's no good. Oh, but you can push something like that. So, right, okay. So they're doing that. So I'm not nicking their code. I'm just trying to look. You'll never find exactly what you want anyway. And if you do, then that's dangerous, just copying someone's code. You don't know how junky it is. Right, so I can, if I want to do a 2D array, I can push a number of items. So that code I don't want to lose, but I'm going to put that in a function. So I'm going to call that function create 1D array. Oh, do that again. And I'm going to put all that code in there because I don't want to lose it. I don't know why it keeps double indenting there. Right, so in my draw code, I'm just going to comment that out because I don't want that to run. Oh, I'll put insert on there. Right, okay, so I want to, from my set of code, I'm going to run another function called create 2D array. Just do that here, function create 2D array. Right, so I've got X stuff. So the one thing let's say I want this to be 10 by 10. So I'm going to create a loop. So I'm going to say for in, let I, so I'm doing C# again. Let I equal 0, I is less than 10, I plus plus. So this loop is I'm gonna use this loop to push an item. So I'm gonna say, what did I call that array? X stuff dot push. And what I'm gonna push is an empty array. I don't know whether that's going to work. So I'm going to run that to see what it does. If it's not happy, it'll complain, but it hasn't complained. So I'd stop that running. Right, so then how do I reference the other part of the array? Now it's the array of array referencing. Right, so then for each one that I've pushed, so I'm going to say for let j equal 0, j is less than 10. So it's just the same thing for like doing any 2D array. I've got two loops. Right, but this one's a little bit trickier. So I'm going to say X stuff 0 dot push. And I'm going to push a value. So what value shall I push? I don't know. I'm just going to put J in there. Or I might do I plus J, just so I've got some number in there. Now, I don't actually know if that's going to work. It might be total garbage. Well, let's run it. It didn't moan at me. I don't know whether you've got a debugger in this, and that's another reason for using VS Code, because you can stop it and we can look to see what it's making. But I'm going to guess that it's working. So, right, in my draw code, I now need to do something that's going to run through or show me my 2D array values. So, I'm going to run a function to do that. But I'm going to just do it in text. I'm not going to get into the complications of the rectangle yet. So I'm going to create a function called show 2D array. And I'm going to run it. Right, so now what's quite interesting now, all my functions are spreading out. So I'm just going to move this so it's next to my other code. And then I've got reference to what I'm doing. Okay, right, so let's just try and display something. So the first time around, it was I plus J. So the first ever item we pushed should have been 0. The next one would have been 2. So I'm just going to use that, what was the text thing, wasn't it? So text, and it's going to be X stuff. So no is what I'm going to push, and I'm going to put that at 20, 20. So I'm just going to see if that comes out. There should be a 0 in there. Oops, flipping out, nearly reset everything. Right, so I've got 0. If I try and get the next one, so text X stuff, no 1, and I'm going to do that at 20. Well, I'll do it at 30, 20. So I'm just doing it along. Although I've gone down a row, haven't I? So actually that should be below. When you're doing 2D arrays, it's up to you how you interpret the first and second index. So I'm just like going, right, the first one is the column, the second one is the row. Right, so I should have a 1 or something. I don't know. Oh, done it again. Run it. Right, so get a 0 and a 1. Right, I'm going to put a loop in here now just to see if I can do this properly. So for let I equal 0, I is less than 10, I plus plus. Right, so I'm going to take one of these bits of code, take them out. I don't need that because I know how to do that. So I want to drop down every time. So I'm going to do 10 plus I times 10. So it's going to drop down when it does each one. And I'm dropping by row, so that's going to change that value. So hopefully I get a sequence of numbers here. There we go. No, they're a bit close, aren't they? So I'm going to make that 15, that gap. I'm using liberal amounts of constants here. So I ought to really give some names to these. So you don't have to do this, but I'm doing it. So I'm going to call that drop Y, so that I'm not just focusing on numbers. So I'll run that. I needed F5 again. Right, so let's spread that out a little bit. Right, okay, so I actually want to go display a column, but I want to move to the next column. So that was doing the row, so I need a loop inside a loop. And remember, that's our standard stuff. So I'm actually going to change the names of these. So this is going to be the row, so I'm going to call it R. Otherwise, I'm going to get confused if I leave it as I and J. I want it to be meaningful. So the next one, I'm going to say column equals 0. Column is less than 10, column plus plus. So I want this loop to be inside that loop. So for every column, I'm drawing all the rows. And obviously it doesn't tab in for me. Another reason for using Visual Studio. Right, okay, so if I do that, I need to modify this to be the column we want to display, and I want to move this along based on the column. So I'm going to say column times step X, and I'm going to create a value called step X, and I'm going to make that a bit bigger because numbers are wide. Notice I haven't been putting semicolons on there and it didn't moan. That's one of the problems with JavaScript. It just fails silently and doesn't whine at you. Right, hopefully this does something, but I don't know what it's going to do. Well, that was rubbish. Right, I got an error message here. Right. Was expecting a string for the first parameter, received an empty variable. Right, okay, so when I did that before and I had a 0 in there, it was happy, and it worked. So obviously that's printing the first column each time. If I put 1 in there and it worked, right, so I haven't created my 2D array properly. That's my problem. Right, so let's have a look at something else. So it's quite interesting. Now I got quite far there, but I still had a stupid problem, which is one of the downsides to, what did I type there? Script. Dynamic create JavaScript 2D array. Right, let's have a look. Someone's asked. Right, so what? So they're using this new array thing. So I think that might actually be the way to go with this. There's no sensible answer. Oh, there is a sensible answer there. So outer array. Oh, create the separate array and then push that. So what I was doing was a bit weird. So that looks quite cool. So I was sort of along the right lines. So instead of pushing that, I think that was what screwed it. So what I should have done is say let n equal an array, and then this should have been n dot push. So I'm just adding things to that array, and then after that loop I can say, so I'll get rid of that line, x stuff dot push n. So x stuff dot push n. Oops, why did that tab over like that? Right, so I've got this code that errored before. Let's just see if that works. So all I'm doing is I've got creating a new array, adding the items to it, and then I'm pushing that entire array onto the X stuff one. So let's just see if that works. Right, it didn't crash. Okay, but that was doing column 1. So let's try putting the column number in, and then I'll reinstigate the C. Right, that looks like it's a different set of numbers. Does look like it's worked actually. So let's put that back to C. And there's the different numbers. Okay, so I've now, through hook and crook and bit and bodge, I've managed to create a 2D array. I think I'm happy with how that works. I've managed to recall the things from it. So the last thing I've got to do is try and do this visual one. So I'm going to be copying this idea. Okay, so I'm going to do it here so I've got something to follow. So I'm going to say function visual 2D array. Oops. And again, I'm going to do it as a parameter so that I can pass it. I'm going to do that text align center. So I'm not going to copy and paste on purpose. So text align center. Right, so I'm going to do that. But this time I need to use a 2D array to process it. So I've got this one here. So I am actually going to copy and paste that because I know that's set up properly. So I'm going to grab that. And I need to close off those two braces. Do the tabbing because it won't do it for me. And then what I want to do is I want to generate I'm just going to do the boxes first. So I've got to do this rectangle bit. So rectangle, starting at 20 plus, and then it's going to be C times 30. Starting at 20 plus R times 30. So I'm manipulating 2 pointers, that's all. And they're going to be 30 by 30. Right. Make sure I run that in my draw code. So I'm not going to do show 2D array. I'm going to run the other one, which I've just forgotten the name of. So that's a good way if you haven't got IntelliSense, copy the name. And then obviously you can't spell it wrong. And that's going to be X stuff. Right. So I'm going to run that. Hopefully that does something graphical on the screen. Well, hey, looking good. Right. So all I've got to do is do the same bit of work of changing the fill color. So I'm going to say, before I draw the rectangle, fill, and I'll do the same thing. I'll use greens or something. So I'm going to say list. Right. So the list is going to be, so where I did the text displaying, I had C, R. So I'm going to say whatever's in C, R. And I'm not going to have any blue. But those numbers I had were quite small. So I'm actually going to just multiply them all by 4. So just so I get a graduation in the green. All right, so that's just a little bodge to get a nicer color. So let's run that. Ooh. I'm going to do it, multiply it by 6, just so we get a bigger spread. Okay, so I've got that spread. I now need to do the text bit. So I'm going to do the fill 255. I'm going to stick to 255 because I think that white will show on any of those colors there. And then I'm going to do text, and then I want to display that number. So that number was from list CR. And where did I want to do it? Wherever the center of this thing is. So this is the top left hand corner again. So let's just start with that. I'm just going to copy those coordinates. So that should be in the top left hand corner, and then I can adjust it by changing the 20 and the 20. So let's have a look. Right, so I need to push them down a little bit. So I want the center, so that's going to be 35 and 35. Because it's 20 plus 15. Oh, don't do that. And there you go, in the center. Okay, so what I might do as well is I might multiply that number by 6, so it's the same number for the color. So I'm just going to do that. There you go. Right, so that's the process of going from no idea what the hell I'm doing. I know what I want to do, but I don't know how to do it. And that's the process I go through. Like the looking up stuff, you'll get used to looking at things and trying it, and that's what I showed there. I tried some. I thought I had the right thing. He wasn't moaning at me until I did a little bit more, which is why we have to do a little bit of practice at a time. Do a little bit, run it, make sure you've got that sorted. If it then screws up on you, then you might need to roll back a little bit, like I did. Okay. Um, if anybody wants that code, I'll post it anyway somewhere. I'll have a think. I'll leave the apple banana thing for anyone who's interested in doing apples and bananas in a 2D array. Okay. Right. I'll stop the vid there and I'll upload that.